Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. Today, I'm going to talk to you about part 2 of this short series on what is trust. So just to recap a little bit about last week's episode, I basically taught you about the 4 cores of credibility, which I learned from the Speed of Trust book by Stephen M.R. Covey. Dr. Stephen R. Covey's son, who wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So I finished up those 4 cores of credibility. I was talking about character and competence. 2 of the cores of credibility are intent and integrity, which fall underneath the character focus. And then capabilities and results are the other 2 cores of credibility, which fall underneath the competence component of trust. Because remember, we can't make someone trust us. We can only be trustworthy. And trustworthiness comes from our character and our competence. And then those 4 cores of credibility make up our character and our competence. And again, I'm just sharing with you some of what I learned when I read The Speed of Trust, which is my number 3 favorite book of all time. And I probably read that book, probably been easily over 10 years ago, but I just want to expose you guys to it, and maybe you'll go read it. It's a big, heavy read. Some of the people who read my books don't like the big, thick books. That's okay. My books are full of the principles that I learned from many books. I simplify it and make it easy to understand. So last time I wrapped up part 1, I was talking about intent, and I talked to you about, I really go deep into intent in my book, Defining Influence, and where I talk about, trust is the foundation of leadership, authentic influence, or authentic leadership. And the foundation of trust is, in my book, I talk about it is our intention. And I just want to take you just a little bit deeper on that before we move into the second core of credibility, which is integrity. But when I talk about intention being the foundation of trust, I teach you that your intention is based on 2 things. People are trying to figure out, are we trying to motivate them or are we trying to manipulate them? People want to know what's our intention. We can decide, we can decide, obviously, when we're doing things, what our intention is, but when it comes to trust, the other people get to decide what our intention is, just as you do. When you meet somebody, no matter what their intention is, the only one that matters is what do you think their intention is? Your perception. Everybody always says this old saying, perception is reality. It definitely applies to intention. But if my intention is to manipulate you, then I'm just trying to win and I'm trying to use you. If you feel manipulated, there's not going to be a foundation for trust. There's not going to be any authentic leadership, no authentic influence. If you follow me, if you think I'm trying to manipulate you and you still follow me, it's only because you have to. I'm the boss, or there's some situation that makes you have to follow me. So there's no foundation to build trust on if the other person feels manipulated. So the goal is you've got to be trying to make sure you're trying to motivate the other person. So the other person sees your intention as motivation. Motivation means there's mutual benefit. I'm going to win and you're going to win. And as Dr. Covey wrote about it in the 7 habits, that's one of the habits. Habit 4 is think win-win. And relative to what I talk about in my book, Defining Influence, that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to motivate people through a win-win relationship where they know they're going to win. They feel like they're going to win, and they're happy if you win too. It doesn't matter. Because see, at the moment they decide, well, I want to win, I don't care if you win, then you're going to feel manipulated. So you're not going to trust them. That's why it's got to be a mutual benefit. So again, if you want to dive deep into trust, obviously you can dive into the Speed of Trust book by Stephen M.R. Covey, but you can also get my book, Defining Influence, subtitle, Increasing Your Influence Increases Your Options. So I want to move on now from that first core of credibility, intent, which is, again, is based on the character component of trust. And I want to move into the other character component, the other core of credibility relative to character, which is integrity. And obviously, if you read the book, you're going to go deep into these cores of credibility. And there's thousands of books on each one of these cores. So I'm just kind of giving you the highlights, the two components, cores of credibility for character, intent, and integrity. So integrity, is about one of those big fancy words, I call it. I don't like to use it, but it's in some of the books. It's in this book, Speed of Trust. But he talks about, are you congruent? And in simple terms, in Mac Story terms, congruent just means you walk the talk. Your walk matches your talk. You have integrity. So this is what most people think about when they think about trust. And to many, integrity basically means honesty. There's a lot more to integrity than honesty. I like Dr. Henry Cloud's definition of character. He says, character is the ability to meet the demands of reality. Basically, to me, what that means, whatever's in your life is not the way you want it to be, character is the root cause of it, because you don't have the ability to meet your reality, which means your reality is you want to be better, or you want to be in a different place in your life. Whatever it means, you want different relationships, you want different outcomes, you want different income, whatever it is you want out of life. If you can't get it, I believe it can be traced back to a character issue, even if you don't have the competency. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. That's the next two cores of credibility. But if you don't have the competency you need to succeed in life, it's because you don't have the character to go get the competency, meaning you won't make the sacrifices needed, whatever that means. So that's how that ties into integrity. So there's four components that Covey talks about in The Speed of Trust when he's talking about integrity. And again, there are a lot more than that, but he talks about honesty. And honesty includes not only telling the truth, but also leaving the right impression. That's a huge component that a lot of people miss. Not only telling the truth, but you got to leave the right impression. Remember about perception. Perception is reality. And it kind of ties back to what I was talking about relative to our intention. When he's talking about the right impression relating to honesty, if you feeling like I'm trying to manipulate you, you won't think I'm honest, and I'm definitely not leaving the right impression. So it's intention plays a role relative to how honesty is going to be seen, how you're going to be seen relative to being honest, I should say. The other component is humility. And a humble person is more concerned about what is right than about being right. And it's about acting on good ideas rather than having the ideas. Humility is about embracing the new truth than defending outdated positions. It's about being concerned with building the team rather than exalting self. It ain't about me. It's about we. And then humility is concerned with recognizing contribution rather than being recognized for making it. You want to recognize other people's contribution, and you ain't worried about being recognized for your own. That's humility. Warden Burl Cain, he's retired now, but he was once the prison warden for Angola in Louisiana State Penitentiary, which was kind of nicknamed Angola. But it used to be the bloodiest prison. That was the reputation it had. One of his lines that I love to use sometimes, he says, "Be humble so you don't stumble." And he had to exercise a lot of humility from the time he started his career there to the time he ended it. He had a major personal transformation about how he was going to lead. and build trust. And it was fundamentally related to the degree of humility he was able to have. And he needed a lot. That's a different book. That's a different story. The fourth component that Covey talks about in Speed of Trust relative to integrity is courage. And courage is about doing the right thing even when it's hard. A lot of people don't even really think about courage relative to just doing the right thing. Most of the time when we talk about courage, we think about the military and law enforcement, firefighters, that kind of stuff. A lot of things they're doing is courageous, but simply doing the right thing is courageous, especially if there's a lot of friends or coworkers who are trying to get you to do the wrong thing. It takes courage. I want to step back too, and I mentioned just integrity uh, earlier. I've actually forgot to mention the other quote by Dr. Henry Cloud. The one I shared with you was, "Character is the ability to meet the demands of reality." And he also says, "Integrity is the courage to meet the demands of reality." So I'm able to tie that uh, quote by him into the teaching by Covey. And that's what I do in my books. When you read my books, I tie all the stuff that I've read, all the stuff that I've learned, all my experiences. I tie it together and make something new out of it. And that's what I'm doing for you. Even as I teach the Speed of Trust, it's really hard for me to just teach the Speed of Trust and share with you what I learned from that book, because I want to share so much more, especially the way that I've compiled it together. But I'm really want to introduce you to this, so I'm trying to stay focused on that content and not get too far away from it. The fourth component, uh, after honesty, humility, and courage relative to integrity, is congruence. Again, one of those words, I don't typically use it. I don't need to use it. If I got to define a word to teach somebody something, it's not a word I want to use. I want to make it simple. But again, congruence is about people who are congruent act in harmony with their deepest values and beliefs. My way of saying it, they walk their talk. When they feel they ought to do something, they do it. So if you want to use the big fancy word, it's congruence, but it's really about doing what you say you're going to do, not being two-faced. There's so many people that are two-faced, they don't even realize they're two-faced. It's hilarious. So many people. I mean, it's hilarious on the inside. I don't laugh outwardly at these people, but they're everywhere. I used to be one of them. I was like 12-faced. My wife's grandparents, they didn't even know I drank alcohol. They didn't even know I used profanity, because I never talked about it around them, and I never used profanity around them because I was pretending to be somebody I wasn't. That's two-faced. If you do that, you're a two-faced person. It's some leadership truth. If you say one thing and do another thing, or you try to hide who you are around some people because you don't want them to really know, you're a two-faced person. That's impacting your ability to connect with people and influence people. If you try to pretend to be somebody at work, especially somebody who hides their private life because you know how your private life will be viewed and talked about at work, you're a two-faced person. People already know that about you. It's impacting your ability to influence people, because trust is the foundation of influence, authentic influence. And if you're a formal authority leader, if people don't trust you, all you got is whatever little bit of influence comes with your position, your title, and your rank. So I'll share a quote about Gandhi that's in the Speed of Trust book. Is actually quoted from Gandhi's secretary. I can't begin to know how to say his name, but the quote is what I care about. I don't care about who said it. But he said, "What Gandhi thinks, what he feels, what he says, and what he does are all the same. He does not need notes. You and I, we think one thing, feel another, say a third, and do a fourth. So we need notes and files to keep track." That's a pretty powerful quote on how Gandhi was living his life at the time this secretary is referencing. Gandhi may not have been like that his whole life, but he was definitely like that a part of his life, and he was like that enough for that secretary to make that quote about him. So when you talk about walking the talk, integrity, I remember, I ain't gonna get deep into this, but I share the story a lot of times when I'm speaking about when my son became a teenager, and I gave him the talk about alcohol and all that sort of stuff, and I told him not to do it, and all the reasons he shouldn't, and the bad experiences that I had, and examples of other people with bad things happening to them, and because they were drinking alcohol, and then the next time he needed a soda or Coke or water or tea or milk, he had to go to the refrigerator, and in the bottom drawer, my beer was always in the bottom drawer. That one that you can turn up the temperature on or turn it down, make it a little bit colder. Yeah, I was two-faced. I was a two-faced parent. I told my boy to do one thing and I did another. That's just one example. I bet you if I could go back and relive and look at it, probably hundreds of things. So if you're telling your children to do one thing and you do another, leadership truth for you right here. You're a two-faced parent. You're damaging your integrity with your children and your spouse and anybody who's watching. I ain't here to beat you up, but I'm here to tell you some truth because some people need to know the truth before they can make their life better. Some people don't know. They ain't ever thought about it. I'm trying to raise your level of awareness. So let's move from the character side and move over to the competency side of the trust equation. Again, trust is based on character and competency. 87% is weighted on the character side, 13% on the competency. You have to have competency. You got to know how to do something that people are willing to pay you for. You got to know that. But your character is going to launch or limit your competency. Your character is going to maximize or minimize your competency. So underneath the competency component of the trust equation, the two cores of credibility again are capabilities and results. So relative to capabilities, Covey talks about talent, attitude, skills, knowledge, and style. You think of the word tasks, that's what he's talking about. A little acronym to remember it. But the question, is when it comes to capabilities, are you relevant? I want to share something with you from the book here. He says, on the individual level, the problem is that many people aren't into the idea of continuous improvement. So they're working in a company. Maybe they've been there for 10 or 15 years, but instead of having 15 years of experience, they really have only 1 year of experience, repeated 15 times. They're not adapting to the changes required by the new global economy. As a result, they don't develop the credibility that would inspire greater trust and opportunity. Often they become obsolete. Their company and or the external markets outgrow them. If corporations aren't engaged in continuous improvement, and in some cases radical improvement, they risk becoming irrelevant and obsolete. Nothing fails like success. In other words, they keep doing the things that made them successful in yesterday's market. But those same things don't create success in today's global economy. And there's a quote in the book here from a U.S. Army Chief of Staff, General Eric Shinseki, I think is the way you say it. But I love this quote. I've used it a lot of times when I'm speaking and teaching. He says, if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. If you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. And whether it's an individual or an organization, everything's changing constantly. Everything. People are changing, customers are changing, products are changing, software is changing, everything's changing. People are changing. And if you can't change and adapt, you're going to become irrelevant. Rhea and I have a book written on that called Change Happens, Leading Yourself and Others Through Change. Most companies, they don't do any development around leading yourself and others through change. But they expect everyone to be flexible and want to change. That entire book is written to help people, leaders especially, but also individuals, to learn how to leverage change to your benefit so you can increase your influence as either a person, individual, or as an organization. But let's break down a couple of these things. So talents, part of your capabilities, again, it is talents. What are my unique strengths and talents? What's the highest use of my talents? And talents are those things that come to us naturally. And I always say, you always hear people say, you got to develop your strengths. Develop your strengths. Develop your strength. Ignore your weakness. That's what people say. A lot of people who's supposed to know what they're talking about say that. When you truly understand all of this, though, what you want to do is you want to develop your strengths relative to competency, where you're naturally good, where you're naturally skilled. Develop those skills. That's what's going to make you exceptional and launch you to the next level. Develop those strengths. But relative to your weakness, incompetency, you can ignore them. But relative to character, you've got to develop your weakness, because your character weakness is what's going to hold you back. Obviously, your character strengths are going to move you forward, but it doesn't take but one thing in your character to override all of your strength. One character weakness can wipe out every single character strength. That's just the way character works. So to build trust, you got to get everything right. As soon as you get one thing wrong, you're creating distrust. So always focus on your competency, strength, and your character weakness when it comes to the development. So attitude's another component of capabilities. He says the attitude I have is a choice. What are my attitudes about work, about life, about learning? That's a big one right there. Some people's attitude about learning is terrible. They don't want to learn. They don't want to read a book. They don't want to listen to a podcast. They don't want to grow. They just want life to be better. They just want their income to go up, but they don't want to really have a good attitude about it. They say they don't like to learn. They don't like to read. The other thing is skill. What skills do you currently have? What skills will you need in the future that you don't currently have? And to what degree are you currently involved in constantly upgrading your skills? Some people just go to work and go home. They think they're just going to get ahead in life based on the work they do during that 8 hours. You can do that if you want to, but what I believe, those who truly want to get ahead, they don't get ahead from 9 to 5, so to speak, when they're on the job. They get ahead from 5 to 9 when they're not on the job, meaning they're growing and developing themselves in the area of character and competency after work and on the weekends. I always tell people, if you hate Mondays, quit goofing off on Saturdays and Sundays. It's about that simple. And then knowledge. What's my current level of knowledge in my specific field? What am I doing to stay current? What am I doing to move beyond my current field toward my passion? Because your competency is again, you got to have it to build trust relative to whatever you got to do, whatever your mission is. The chairman and CEO, Anne, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I'm really looking at it, but I ain't even going to try it. But she was chairman and CEO of Xerox at some point. She says, I am still learning. That is an important mark of a good leader. To know you don't know it all and never will. That's pretty powerful. I talk about my friend and mentor, who's former president and COO of Chick-fil-A. He was Truett Cathy's third employee. He reported to Truett for 33 years, and he's read 100 books every year. He was the president and COO of Chick-fil-A, 33 years. He read and still reads 100 books per year. He's 85 now. But busy as he was, he read 100 books a year. That's what high-impact leaders do. The high-impact people I know, they're constantly developing their competency and their character. So the fifth component of capabilities is your style. Are you approachable? How do I interact with others? See, and style to me really goes back to character. When I teach this, I don't put style under capabilities or competency. I put style under character, because I think your style is determined by your character. Because there's some people, they're very sharp. They have a high degree of competency, but they're not approachable. People don't even like to talk to them, don't want to interact with them. People don't trust people that they can't build a relationship with or approach with a problem or ask a question. So let's move on to the fourth core of credibility. The second one underneath the competency side, and it's results. And again, you got to think of every single thing I'm talking to you about in the context of how does it increase or decrease your influence. You know, your talent, your attitude, your skill, your knowledge, your style. How does that increase or decrease your influence? Everything you do in life, you should be thinking about, how does that increase or decrease my influence? So relative to results, I love this, and I reference this a lot when I'm speaking, but relative to results, Covey talks about in The Speed of Trust, your past results, your current results, and your future results. He wants to know your results basically is, what's your track record? And I'll tell you this, the quickest way to build trust is to get results, whatever that means for the boss or for the customer. Whatever that means, the quickest way to build trust is to get results. It's a competency issue. But the quickest way to lose trust is a character issue. And you can lose it in a minute. It's not so easy to get results sometimes. So you got to work on getting the results relative to the competency side. But you can make one statement, one decision, one choice, and everything will be ruined. You lose 100% trust. Same way at home. It's the same exact way at home. So when we talk about past results, people want to know, what have you accomplished in the past? What's your track record? What's your reputation? Remember, I talk about in a lot of my books about word-of-mouth advertisement. Word-of-mouth advertisement is telling somebody your track record or your reputation. Good or bad, you're getting it all the time. That's why you got to lead yourself in a way that people speak highly of you. Because people are talking about people all the time. So your past results either going to build trust or create distrust. Current results. What are you currently doing? How are you performing today? Current results are either going to build trust or create distrust. And then future results. What are you doing to increase your performance in the future? Are you growing? Who knows you're growing? That's why you want to be growth oriented, not goal oriented. You want to be growing nonstop because it tells people about your future results. That's why I've been reading every day since 2008. It's why I always say that. If you listen to my podcast, you probably heard me say that 1,000 times. You're like, why don't he shut up about that? It's because I'm talking about past results. I talk about current results and future results in that one statement. When I say I've been reading every day since 2008 and I'm never going to stop, that right there tells you a lot relative to the results core of credibility underneath competency, because that's what I do. Imagine if everybody in every industry could say that authentically and honestly, that whatever it is they do, they've been reading about it every day and studying about it and trying to get better at it every day for years and years and years and years. Most people can't say that, but I can say that because I'm trying to build trust. I'm also trying to get better. Character and competency. Just so happens that leadership development and personal growth, when you're a speaker or a writer and you're doing what I'm doing, all of this is the same. The character side and the competency side is the same, because I need to read and study this stuff to get better relative to my character, but I also teach about it and speak about it. So it actually, for me, it is my competency. Before, I did all kind of other jobs, so I had a different competency when I was doing lean manufacturing, that sort of thing. But the key is to take responsibility for all of your results. And John Maxwell, in one of his books, he has the 21 laws of leadership, 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. He says law number 6, the law of solid ground, states that trust is the foundation of leadership. No leader can break trust with his people and expect to keep influencing them. Character makes trust possible, and trust makes leadership possible. And he talks about law number 9, the law of accountability, states that accountability equals character plus competency plus consistency. So I hope you join me on the next episode where I'm going to start diving into the 13 behaviors of high trust leaders. It's going to be some really good stuff. I mean, it's good stuff. It's my favorite part of the book. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.